Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this session of the Data Doctor. Today, we're going to look at tooltips, but specifically, we're going to talk about Viz tooltip, or the ability to take an image from one sheet and put it in the tooltip of another. Let's start by looking at what a tooltip is and how they're created. First, we're going to take just a very quick look at a Superstore data set. All we've got in here, we've got region by order date. And by default, when you hover over any of the marks, the tooltip opens up. And the default is that each of the dimensions or measures in the tooltip is listed in a text table. Now you'd open that up, come over here to the tooltip, click on it to open it, and a window opens. And this is where the tooltip is actually formatted and created. And this is what the default looks like. It just comes on and it has each one of the dimensions or measures are identified, and they're in these carets so that you know it's a dimension or a measure. It tells how the measure is aggregated, and then there's a very simple text that you can change. You can make this text anything you wanted. If you wanted to change this, for example, and just said that this is the region, and for some reason you wanted that to be we're just going to highlight it here. You wanted that to be bold, and you wanted it to be 16, and you wanted it to be red, for example. It would look like that. And then when you hover over this, the tooltip would open, and your custom formatting would be in the tooltip. Well, we're not going to do that. We're going to take a look at a different option called Viz tooltip. And what do we talk about with Viz tooltip? Maybe the easiest thing is to just show you how we use it and how we go about creating it. The same text table. And now when I hover over it, all of a sudden we've got this image in there. And the image that you see is a horizontal bar chart, and it's created on a separate worksheet. It's created right here on this in this tab that I call Detailed Sheet for Text. And all I did was create a horizontal bar chart. There's nothing special about this. This is just ship mode, and I'm counting the number of borders. And it's a separate sheet all by itself. Now, to get it into the tooltip, what I would do is I'd open up the tooltip, and you can see I've done some customization here. Change the text here to make it a complete sentence. In the year for a certain region, what the total sales were. And then I just put in, by ship mode within the sales region, sales were. And now here's where the chart is going to go. And I'm going to show you how I put that in. I'm going to take it out, and then we're going to put it back in again. We come up to insert, and we're going to insert a sheet. And I've got all the sheets in the workbook are listed, and the one that we want is Detailed Sheet for Text. And we can find it here, Detailed Sheet for Text, and we drop it into the tooltip, and it's just that easy. You can see that this is text also, and we're going to take advantage of that later. And then I'm going to explain what these fields are, but you can see here, this first field is the tab name itself. Okay. These next two fields, height and width, are the size of the box. And then we are filtering for all fields. So now when we hover over it, you can see that we are looking at the year 2020. We're looking at the Eastern region, and we're looking at the total sales were 156,000. And that bar chart represents the combination of those dimensions. Now you see if we change here, you can see that bar chart is changing along with it, as well as the text. Well, let's take a look at that syntax again and see how that comes about. This is that same statement. All this first piece of the syntax does, and this is it's in single quotes or in double quotes. It identifies the tab or the worksheet. The next two, the height and the width, are adjustable, and they represent the size of the box that you're going to have for the image itself. Now, in practice, that 300 by 300 tends to be a little bit small. Those are pixels. But once you get up to about 500 by 500, you're kind of hitting a usable limit on a worksheet. You can certainly go larger, but you'll have to play with that on your own worksheet. But I find that once you get over like 500 by 500, that box is just taking up a whole lot of room. And this last area here, we see filter, and it says all fields. Now you see on the sheet, we don't have any filters specified. This doesn't mean take the filters that are on the sheet and transfer them over to the target sheet. It means takes all of the fields or the dimensions that are on the worksheet and transfer those over to the target sheet. And when we do that, we end up filtering this sheet not only for the year, but for the region. And you say, but Jim, year and region aren't on this sheet. And that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. They don't have to be on this sheet for this sheet to be filtered by year and region when we transfer that as part of the tooltip. And you can see right here that this is a filter that's created by Tableau, and it's a tooltip filter, and it's transferring the year, the order date, and the region, which come directly off of the column and row dimensions. So here we're looking at 2020 for central region. Now we're looking at 2019 for the southern region, and you can see our bar chart changing as well as the values in the chart. Okay. Well, that's the basics. Let's take a look at some of the things you can do with Viz and Tooltip. Now, I like to use Viz and Tooltip a lot when I'm working with maps. And it allows you to create a map, and then within the map, it allows you to bring up information that the end user might want to know more in depth about certain points or certain areas within the map. Now, this is just a map of the U.S., and I've actually created 2 layers in this map. This area chart is by region, and it just breaks out the region so that we know what the West is versus the East. And then on a separate layer, I've got the sum of sales, and those are the circles that you see. And the larger circle size is related to the sum of sales. So the larger circles are the sum of sales. What I'd like to do in addition to that is I would like to look at a breakout of the sales by each one of the states in the region when I hover over the state. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take this chart, and this chart is nothing more than region and state, the sum of sales, and then I've sorted it in descending order. So within each region, I can see the greatest sales, the state with the greatest sales at the top and down to the least. Now, when I hover over like the state of California here, it's going to pull up the Western region, and I see all the states in the Western region. That's what I wanted to see. When I go up to Washington, I see the total for Washington, but I also see that same image coming across from my target sheet. It's all the states in the state of Washington. And we come over here and we look at New York, we can see all the states within the region, the Eastern region, and they're sorted in descending order. Well, let's take a look at how that's done. We're going to open up the tooltip, and you can see here, we've got the sheet name. It says, okay, I want to use this sheet. That's the sheet we created with the horizontal bar chart on there. And there's the size, 300 by 300. And the only field we are sending across is region. Now I create that I can open up insert and select region, or I can select all fields, which is the default. Here I selected region, so I don't want all the fields going across. I don't want the state going across. All I want is the region, because I want to see this chart for the entire region, and I can see where California ranks. Well, California is kind of obvious, but see where California ranks in relation to the other states. Here is the state of Colorado, for example, and Colorado is about the third one down. Okay. I could have used all fields here. I could have used all fields. And then when I hovered over a state, I would only see the particular state. There's the state of California. Here's the state of Colorado. But that's not what I wanted to see. So I changed the filter to be only regions. Well, that's one example of what you can do with that. There are other examples, and this one I kind of like. I like to go the other way sometimes. Here I've got a text chart, and what I'd like to see in this text chart when I hover over a mark is I'd like to see a map of the region, and I'd like to see that map broken out by category. And I've created a map using a pie chart, and the pie chart is broken out by the percent of total, and I'm going to show you what that is right here. And this is the percent of total sales broken out by category in each one of the states. Now, this is a very busy pie chart. I mean, you wouldn't ever want to just put this on a map and have a user trying to go figure out what's going on with this chart. But it serves its purpose when we look in this chart, because I've got a text table. And what I'd like to see is, as I hover over one of these marks, I'd like to see by region, by segment, either consumer, corporate, or home office, I'd like to see the breakout of sales within that region. So now I can see all the states in the region. I can see for the corporate segment in the Eastern region, I can see what the totals are, and I can see how in each state the sales are broken out by category. And you can see we're looking at Eastern region here. Corporate, if we looked at consumer, and you can see these, you can see the pie charts changing as I hover over a different combination of segment and region. And this is all done just by bringing in the proper sheet right there. And you can see it's grayed out because I've already used it. You can only use it once in each individual tooltip. Okay. And I can place it in, just add it to the tooltip. And that's all it took to be able to provide this level of information, additional information to the end user. Well, sometimes looking at maps, I'd like to bring in more than one sheet's worth of information. I mean, if I can bring in one sheet, is it possible to bring in two sheets into the Viz and tooltip? And you'll sometimes hear people talk about this being called dashboard in tooltip. And the short answer is, yeah, you can do that. You certainly can. I've made two additional sheets here. I wanted to take a look at, first of all, our map is nothing more than sales by state, and it's an area map. And here, I've got sales by category, and you can see I've got category and sales, and I don't have state in this sheet at all. And I've got sales by segment, and this is sales by segment. And once again, I don't have state within this segment. But with this simple map, with these two simple worksheets here, we can take a look at the state level, and we can break out the sales by segment and by category. Now, to do that, I want to do one additional thing. I'm going to add a horizontal line, and this is nothing more than text. And that's all that chart is. It's just text, and it's just a dash going across there because I want to add a little formatting to the chart. So let's take a look at where we're going. Now, when I hover over the state, it's going to pull up something that looks like this. And we've done a lot of formatting here, and I'm going to take you through the formatting and show you how it's done. We've got a horizontal line. You can see right there above the charts themselves. And there's the two charts. I've got sales by segment for the state and sales by category for the state. And you can see when I start changing states, you can see these values changing. So what's happening is the state, the dimension for the state is being passed to the sales by category sheet and the sales by segment sheet. And that is filtering the data that's on those sheets. And what's actually coming back is an image. It's a PNG. It's just an image. Okay. Let's take a look at how we created this, because now this is getting into using this tooltip text area to do our formatting here. First, I've created some custom text, and you can create the custom text to be whatever you want. But then I wanted to put a header in here. So all I've done here is just change the size and the color of the text that I put in, so I can provide a little distance there. Now, I separated this by a carriage return, and I dropped in that horizontal line. And all I did to get this horizontal line was to pull in the sheet called horizontal line. I'm going to drop that in place. And now I've got two worksheets. Okay, the first worksheet is our sales by segment. And the second worksheet is sales by category. And you can see they're in the same line. I haven't put a carriage return in there. Okay. And when we do that, we get the chart that you see. You can see the two worksheets, the segment worksheet and the category worksheet are on the same line, and they're separated by the horizontal line is used to separate the top half of the chart from the bottom half of the chart. I could also have done, before somebody asked, we could have put in a carriage return, and when you do that, that would stack the charts one over the other. I didn't really like the look of that, so I changed it to be the horizontal chart that you see. Okay. Now I've got two more examples that I want to show you, and these are going to get a little more complex. This one is an example, and the data set that I use for this is it's a data set that looks like this. And if Tableau is going to cooperate, we can take a look at it. I've got in this data set, I've got crime data. This is FBI data that I downloaded from the web. And I've got a city, and each city belongs to a state and region. And then there's several years worth of data. There's population data, and then there's individual crimes. And this is an actual count of the crimes. And then we calculate a crime rate. A crime rate is the number of crimes per 1,000 population. That's just a definition that they use, and you'll see me use this. That's why we're out here taking a look at it. But I've used this with a number of classes that I've taught, and in there we have the users or the students create this map, because it gives them a variety of things that you can do with mapping. First, creating the map itself as a circle map, and the circles themselves, the size of those circles is based on the population of the city. Okay. And the color of the circle is based on the number of incidences. Okay, that's a metric in and of itself. And we could go on and on about how to create the chart, but that's not the important part. What I'd like to do is I'd like to see how that crime rate varies in each city over a number of years. And I'm going to actually recreate a chart here. I've got this already made, but we're going to drop in a new chart to show you how it's made. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a look by year. And I'd like to see what the crime rate was. And if you remember that calculation, the crime rate per 1,000, we can look at it like this. And the default is bar charts, and I don't really want to see that. We have a line chart. Now I want to go one step further. In this line chart, what I want to do is I want to look at each one of the cities independently. So I dropped that on color. And I've got an absolute mess here, but this is absolutely what we want to create, because each one of these lines represents the crime rate trend by city. And you can see that as I hover over the city, we can see what these crime rate trends look like. Okay. Now we're going to take advantage of the fact that we can Viz and Tooltip is going to filter that very messy line chart or trend chart based on the city. And I'm going to show you how we do that. We're going to take a look here, and all I've done is drop in, oops, the chart, the feed for the rate, which is the chart that I created earlier. We've got the same default size, 300 by 300, but the only variable or the only dimension I want to take over is city. And when we do that, now I can hover over Chicago. We'll get the crime rate per 1,000 by year and see the trend in that crime rate for Chicago only, or Milwaukee, or Houston, Texas, or New York City. So we're providing another level of information for our end user. Now I use this technique of creating this chart that only I will see. I use this over and over again, and we're going to look at it in the next example also. I'm going to use it again. It's a great way of doing lookups. Think of a catalog. Maybe you had something with coming out of your SAP system or your ERP system, where you had a whole lot of master data based on a customer level or a SKU. You can make a chart like this, except a text chart, and it just looked terrible, and you'd never show it to a user, but you're the only one that's going to see it. And when you do that and then filter it using Viz and Tooltip, you're only going to see that single line or the single set of information that you want to use. It's a great way of isolating information from a detailed table. Let's take a look at the one last example I want to share with you. This one gets really complex, and sometimes the easiest thing to do is to show you the result, and then we'll talk about how you actually do it. This is a dual action Viz and Tooltip. When I hover over the state of California, for example, I see a line chart, a trend chart that's going to show me profitability or profit by year. But when I click on the state of California, I get an entirely different chart. I get a pie chart. So I've got two different actions based on whether I'm clicking on the state or whether I'm hovering on the state. Okay, very cool, and it does two things. First of all, it's dynamic and it's kind of fun for the end user to do it, but it also gives them a lot of different information. And you can think of a number of different examples where this sort of thing might work. Now, to do this, we need to create not just the map that you see here, but we need two additional charts. And the first one we're going to look at is the annual profit, and this is the line chart that we created, and it's the same type of chart similar to the chart that I just used in the crime data, except for one key feature. And here I've added a filter, and that filter is based on a set, and it's a set filter. It's just an in-out filter for the set. And all it is I use all the states, and we're going to use a set action to change that actual set. Very simple chart, but it's very important that we use a set as our filter. Okay. Now the second chart is like that very, very busy chart we just created in the crime data. And all I've done here is created a pie chart, and I put state on rows. So for each state, there's a pie chart that breaks out the percent of total by segment. Okay, very messy chart, but once again, you're the only one that's going to see it. The user is just going to see the end result. So now we've got this map, and we've got these two charts created, but how do we make them swap? Well, let's take a look at the tooltip itself. And this is not what you expected to see. This statement right here, and that's text again, does the sheet swap. Okay. So let's go over and take a look at what that statement says, and you can see it's text. Oops. It's text, And the text is where the form of the statement that we've been using, the Viz and Tooltip type text statement, that's where that statement resides. And I've created a case statement. And we're going to look at this in just a second, but this just counts the number of states that are in the view. And if the number of states is equal to 1, then I want to see the pie chart right here. I want to see the pie chart. If it's greater than 1, then I want to see the annual profit chart. Okay. And we're just passing those with all fields. Now, to be honest with you, when I created this chart, I went up the way that I showed you before and did an insert and inserted the actual sheets so that Tableau created that for me. And then I just put that in single quotes inside this case statement to switch between the true and the false there. Now, one additional thing, this is just a window count, and this is what the condition is based on. It just counts, and we're using window sum, counts the total number of states that are in the view, and if it's equal to 1, it's going to return a true, and if it's not, it's going to return false. So it's going to be true. This is this thing again. It's going to be true when there's only 1 state in the view, and it's going to be false when there's more than 1 state in the view. Okay. Got one more thing to do, and that's on the worksheet itself. We need to create some actions. Okay, there we go. The first action is nothing more than it passes when I click on it, when I select a state, when I click on a state, it passes that state name back onto the map itself so that when I click on a state, there's only 1 state selected. There's only 1 state in the view. Now, I've got an action for hover, okay? And this is a set action. And when I hover over a state, we're going to assign the value of that state to that set we created, the selected state set that we created. And when I release it, or when I'm no longer hovering on a state, then we want to see all values. And you probably already guessed, this one is the same type of function. It works on select and not on hover. Okay. And when we combine all those together, now we've got an action that will allow us to hover over a state and show us 1 chart, which is our annual profit or a line chart. But when I select that state, now I've only got a single state in the view. None of the other states are actually part of the view. We've only got 1 state highlighted here. And that in turn is triggering the pie chart that you see here. Okay. Well, that's what I wanted to share with you today. Viz and Tooltip provides a lot of flexibility, provides another way that you can provide information to your end user, and you can have a lot of fun doing it. It does take a little work. It does take some practice. So I'd encourage you to do that the next time you're working with a worksheet and you want to create a dashboard out of it. All the information that I've shared with you today is out on my blog, jimdehner.com. You can also download this workbook off of my Tableau public site, and this is the address for the Tableau public site, or you can just go to the blog, and the links are there to get to my public site. And you can reach me at Market Analytic 5, which is my Twitter handle. Thank you very much for your time today, and hope to see you again next month.